let's just dive right into this.
Sure.
The last year and a half of your political life has been particularly interesting. You had the Senate race that you lost to Ted Cruz. You had a loyal guy in your campaign go offline. You had a bumpy session. You're welcome to disagree with any of these. We had what is on my note card here as the Wendy thing. The Allen Police Department phone call. And now you've got 3 guys who endorsed you in your last race challenging you in a Republican primary. That's something you don't find on everybody else's resume either. Let's go through this. How does this race look? What from the last year and a half has turned the race that you're in today, the race that you're in today?
Well, I'm looking forward to the race. I'm having a good time. I learned a number of things last year. Go with your instincts. Do what you think's right. Don't necessarily always listen to your consultants. And we're having a lot of fun. We're going all around the state of Texas. We're listening to people, which I've done for years and years in the past. In fact, we've got a video out right now that's called Listening. And when you go in people's homes and houses and you listen to them, it's amazing what you hear. I will differ with you. I think this is probably one of the most successful conservative sessions. If you take the 3 specials and the regular that we've had in arguably decades. So I'm proud of the session.
Okay, let me go back for a second. You said you implied there were places where you didn't follow your instincts that you might have in the last race. What were some of those things? What should you have done that you kind of knew at the time you should be doing?
First of all, my wife keeps saying, David, just get out there and meet people. At the end of the day, you're better just talking to people, being with people than you may be on TV or if you're giving a regular speech. And so that's what I've been doing. I wanted to go out last year. We had a big argument with the campaign. They wanted me to stay back and raise money, which I did. But at the end of the day, this race isn't about David Dewhurst, and it's not about the other people in the race. This race is about you all, ladies and gentlemen. It's about what is in your best interest. And so that's what I've made this race about. I'm going out and talking to people everywhere about what is that you want. Here's what I've done for you in the past, and here's what I'm going to do for you in the future. And what are your thoughts?
Let's talk about this famous phone call. You called the Allen Police Department on a Saturday night?
Saturday night.
A relative is in jail for taking a bag of groceries without paying for it, accused of taking a bag of groceries without paying for it. And you made a phone call that most advisors would tell a person in public office not to make, and the phone call is awkward. It's 12 minutes, it's kind of painful. Can you talk about it a little bit?
You know, I've said to the press, I wish I'd made it 45 seconds. But at the end of the day, what kind of relative? I'm not the kind of relative that if you get a call from your stepsister and she's bawling, and then you talk to her son and he's in tears, and they're telling me it was a mistake.
Right.
And what did they do? How did they go post bail? And so that's what I did. I said over and over again that I didn't want any special treatment, follow all your rules.
But you also said over and over again that you were the Lieutenant Governor of Texas and that you were the favorite of law enforcement, and made it clear to the officer on the other end of the call that, you know, I have a VIP on the line. Is this something that an office holder should have done?
At the end of the day, I didn't want to beguile this officer and have me think it was a crank call when I said, hi, this is David Dewhurst. I'm the concerned uncle. And so I told him who I am. And also told him, follow all your rules, don't expect any special treatment. And the police department put out a statement that said, look, this call is similar to calls we get every day from concerned relatives.
If it's a Saturday, if somebody gets thrown in jail tonight, what do you do? What'd you learn here? I'm belaboring this a little bit because I think we're going to be hearing this commercial, or we're going to be hearing a lot of this phone call sometime between now and March 4th, I'm guessing.
You know, we may, but this is the political season,
Right.
And if that's all that other people have to talk about, I'm concerned about the fact that we're at a crossroads. And we've taken the state from, and I'm pleased to have the opportunity of your hiring me in the past to take this state from a good state to a great state. But with 1,200, 1,300 new people coming in every day into this state, we either keep growing and keep this state the most pro-growth, pro-family state in the country, or Ross, we're going to start sliding. And our kids, we're not going to have the same opportunity. Our children are not going to have the same opportunity that we've had just recently, and that's not right. So that's what I'm going to be focused on.
Okay. The legislative session was interesting. The regular session was, a lot of people, both in the press and outside the press, were calling it the Kumbaya session. Everybody was getting along. It was, the partisan things that had marked some previous sessions weren't front and center. We had, things like the water bill and a transportation bill and budget, just the stuff of government, sort of like a Disney movie, and it was followed on a double bill by a couple of Quentin Tarantino features. We got this, I guess two of the four issues, arguably three of the four issues that were up in the special sessions were all the most intensely partisan issues you can take up. One, start with redistricting. Second, start with an issue, the women's clinics, abortion and all of that, that is divisive in large measure, not completely, but along party lines. So you know that this is in for a fight. Knowing all of that and looking in the rearview mirror a little bit at how it unfolded and how the filibuster unfolded and all of that, what would you do differently? Did you guys effectively build a podium for Wendy Davis?
No. You know perfectly well that in the Senate rules that any one person can filibuster any bill. Right. At the end of the day, we broke the filibuster, and look at the scoreboard. Protecting women's health and protecting the lives of babies won. Right. Yeah, and when you look at the components of the bill, at the end of the day, when you had the International Socialist Movement, and when you had MoveOn.org, and when you had all these paid protesters there, the major thing that we should have done is had more security in the Capitol. And we did a week and a half later, and look at the scoreboard, the bill passed, the biggest omnibus pro-life bill in the country. But keep in mind, this is a partisan wedge issue for the Democrats. When I've talked to...
It's a partisan wedge for the Republicans too, isn't it?
No, it's a protection of women's health and a protection of babies' lives. 27 other states, Ross.
It's not a partisan issue for Republicans?
27 other states require ambulatory surgical centers. And 34 other states had earlier deadlines for abortions than the state of Texas.
So you won the issue. Could you have handled the politics differently? I mean, Wendy Davis is sort of their star of the moment. Apparently, doesn't matter if you're Ted Cruz or Wendy Davis, talking a long time makes you a star. Whatever works, right? But could you have sequenced this? You're in charge of the process. Could you have sequenced this in a different way and said, let her filibuster, we'll come back tomorrow morning and sign this bill. Let's go ahead and pass the transportation bill out. Let's go ahead and pass the criminal justice bill out. Let's let her talk into the night. It'll be another quiet filibuster. Most people don't pay much attention to these things. We'll come back tomorrow morning. Perry will call us back. Bada bing, bada boom.
Well, first of all, I had no guarantee that Perry was going to call us back. And at the end of the day, I don't back off from a fight. And I don't back off from mob rule. And so I asked the House, I sent them a message Thursday-ish, of the previous Thursday before the Tuesday, which was the last day of the session. And I said, make sure you get us the bill back by Sunday noon, early afternoon, because we've got a firm 24-hour layout period. And I also said that if you don't, you're going to put the bill into filibuster range. I didn't think there was anyone probably today that could have filibustered for 36 hours, but they could filibuster for 12 hours or 13 hours. Right. And so I made that clear to the House. Unfortunately, for whatever reason, they couldn't get it back to us in time. So I had to make a decision on whether I backed down or I went forward. I went forward. And I brought all the Republican senators together. And that morning, the Tuesday before we started at 11-ish in the morning, I said, we have a decision to make. We're either going to end forever the precedent to have a filibuster by going directly to Senator Hager in essence calling the previous question.
Right.
Or we're going to have to try and break the filibuster. That requires my sustaining 3 points of order. And overwhelmingly, regardless of what people interestingly are saying now, everyone was for protecting the precedent to be able to filibuster and to break Wendy Davis's filibuster. So that's what we did. It took us 11 hours.
One of the conversations in your primary, and you know, it's hard to tell whether this is an Austin bubble question or whether voters care about it, is about Senate rules and about filibusters. One of these, the 2/3 rule gets a lot of conversation, at least inside kind of the, you know, the friendly confines here. I know that Dan Patrick has talked about, and Jerry Patterson to some extent has talked about this in the primary fight. Do you expect the rules in the Senate to change? And I'll ask that question a little bit hypothetically. Under you, will they change? Would they change if one of the other guys was elected?
Well, I'm going to leave that question for the other fellows. The 2/3 rule has been a senator's rule. It's not my rule. It's been a senator's rule since, if memory serves, in the 1870s. And the senators can keep it or change it. What I've said over and over again, I can play it square around. I can have a calendars committee, or we can have the 2/3 rule. The frustration, at the end of the day, my responsibility is to you all, to the people of Texas. And just using the pro-life bill, third-party polling that I've seen over and over again, the majority, 60+% of Texans consider themselves pro-life. At the end of the day, the 2/3 rule has been, as I've understood it, meant to bring people together. If you've got concentrated efforts and the will of the majority is blocked time after time, then that calls into question whether or not the time is passed for the 2/3 rule. But again, that's a senator's decision.
So if you were advising them, or if you were arguing a point, would you say keep it or lose it?
Well, what I have done is on controversial bills that I knew that we could not reach an agreement on,
Right.
such as redistricting. I have not had a blocker bill, a 2/3 rule in the special sessions.
Right.
And so I have made that decision in order to move legislation forward because there was no other way to do it. We had to change the rules in order to even bring up photo voter ID, for instance. And even though we modeled it after Indiana and Georgia, both of their voter ID bills have been declared constitutional by the U.S. Supreme Court. We still had a partisan fight on our hands.
Let me ask this in a way it might be asked in a broader way in a Republican primary. In a body that is nearly, not quite, but nearly 2/3 Republican, clearly a majority Republican, why shouldn't Republicans be able to run everything? Why should there be Democratic chairs? Why should there be, you won the election, it's over, roll?
I think that's a good question. I think that's a good question. We've had a tradition in Texas since the 1870s. And again, this is a senator's rule. But because in the special session in 2011 and the 3 special sessions this year in 2013, knowing that we had controversial bills, we had redistricting both times, right. I made the decision not to have a blocker bill because we would have been stymied. The will of the majority, overwhelming will of the majority, would have been thwarted. Now that doesn't, in all those cases, I brought Democrats in. We had Republicans, we had Democrats. I had meeting after meeting on each of these bills trying to reach a fair agreement, but couldn't do it.
Do you think those traditions are worth keeping, or do you think the Republicans ought to, we won, we should be controlling this?
If at the end of the day...
And I guess the flip of that is if and when the Democrats ever do it, are the Republicans willing to suffer the consequences?
And I think that's a fair question. That's something that we've asked ourselves. But at the end of the day, if the will of the majority is thwarted over and over again, then I think the efficacy of this rule, the time has come to change it.
If we had been having this conversation 18 months ago, you would have been telling me the reasons why you wanted to be in the United States Senate. We have a senator on the ballot this year in your party who's seeing a little heat these days, John Cornyn. Do you still want to be U.S. Senator? Did you think about running for this seat? And if not, why not? I mean, 18 months ago, that was David Dewhurst is appointed at federal office. Why not?
18 months ago, I wanted to have a chance to go in and use the leadership and the experience which I've gained here in Texas to make a difference in Washington. I'm so much more disappointed today in Washington and frustrated with Washington than I was 18 months ago, certainly over what's transpired over the last 18 months. Texas has a model that every time I talk to people from other states, and even in Washington, I'm incredulous. Why in the world? I mean, I'm a businessman. I'm a career businessman. I know how to grow companies. I know how to grow the state. Why in the world wouldn't you adopt a growth model? All this arguing about taxes and cutting, why don't you grow your economy? Our economy this year is growing, according to Susan Combs, 3.4%, over twice the rate of the rest of the country. Right. And so that's the expertise which I wanted to take. I came, after the election, I did a lot of soul searching. I prayed about it with my wife. And that's why I came in this session so enthusiastic. I wanted to make sure that we kept our state number one, and we are. I wanted to make sure that we addressed the infrastructure needs. With our population, ladies and gentlemen, doubling between today with 26 million people and 50 years from now, 50 million people, we're going to have to double our water, we're going to have to double our highways, we're going to have to double our electricity. And so that's what I've undertaken this year, that and a lot of other pieces of legislation.
Having decided to stay here, the seat that's been blocked since 2000, Rick Perry was up there, everybody supported him, but he was young and healthy, and so kind of stunted the growth in the org chart. The governor's job is open. Why aren't you running for that?
I'm running for re-election because I think I can help keep Texas number one more as lieutenant governor than as governor. I'm not taking anything away from the office, but when you're lieutenant governor, you've got your hands on the throttle and you're working directly one-on-one with 31 senators, and so that's something I know I can do. Again, we're at a crossroads. If we don't keep growing, if we don't keep this state jobs being generated, our children are going to have less opportunities than we've had. I've seen company after company get to be number one and start that slide down. I don't want to see that happen. Secondly, we're being attacked at the same time by the Obama administration. They've got their eyes on Texas because they've woken up to the fact that if they can just turn Texas blue, the chances of Republicans winning the White House in the next few generations is very, very slim. And so that's why I've been working, that's why I've been traveling, that's why I've been working with people. That Texas is going to turn blue over my dead, cold political body.
Well, talk about it in political terms. Do you think it's even possible? Do you think it's even a threat? I mean, it's a great fundraising line. It turns out to be a great fundraising line for both parties. Look, we're going to try to turn Texas blue, send money. Look, they're trying to turn Texas blue, send money. I mean, we've both read those mailers. Do they have a realistic chance at it? Is this an actual threat?
I don't think so today. I don't think so. But the worst, but if we get complacent, maybe. And so we can't be complacent. The majority of people in the state consider themselves, 60+%, consider themselves to be conservative. And if we're complacent, yeah, it could happen. Because at the end of the day, elections aren't decided by on a per capita basis. It's decided by who turns out.
Right.
And increasingly, we're seeing fewer and fewer people turn out for our elections. So if the Democrats get all of their base turned out and our base is complacent, yeah, we could have a problem.
So does Greg Abbott, is he threatened at all by Wendy Davis?
No.
In the governor's race?
No. He's not, I'm not, no. I mean, I respect her. I respect her. I don't agree with her, but I respect her. She's a bright, hard-working lady.
Talk about your race a little bit. You've got these three guys who all endorsed you against Cruz, all lined up. Mm-hmm. One of them, kind of came to your side and was working closely enough with you that you named him chairman of a major committee in the Senate, Dan Patrick's Education Committee. You've known Jerry Patterson since you guys ran against each other in 1998.
Right.
Maybe before that.
Right.
Todd Staples served in the Senate under you. What's going on here? Why are these guys running? How do you handicap this race?
I'm going to win.
Well, walk me through it.
I'm going to win.
Just one step.
Okay. Well, I'll give you a couple steps. I'm going to outwork them. I'm going to remind people in Texas why they love Texas, that we have taken this state from being a good state to a great state. We're number one in every economic category, and that's not, there are other factors, but people at the end of the day want to be able to take care of themselves. They want to be able to take care of their families. They want to be able to give their children as much or more in the form of opportunities as we've had growing up. And that's what I've helped create. And that's why I want to keep Texas growing. Again, this is all about you all. This is not about me. This is not about the other three fellows. What's in your best interest?
But in a primary, how does that differentiate you from the other three fellows?
Because I know how to grow the state. I've shown it. What is the number one predictor for future behavior? Past behavior. And I know how to keep this state moving. I know how to continue to improve our public education, because we've got to have a well-trained workforce. I know how to keep fighting against Obamacare. I've led the effort here in Texas in the legislature to not expand Medicaid and Obamacare and not go into the exchanges. So I have fought for the things that the people of Texas, the vast majority, want.
Is the rate of uninsured, since you brought up Obamacare, is the rate of uninsured in the state is the highest? As I understand it, we have the highest number of uninsured people. We have the highest percentage of uninsured people. Whether you get there through Obamacare or not, is that an issue in a Republican primary? And even if it's not as lieutenant governor, is there anything that you see the state actually doing anything about here?
Oh,
I mean, it's been the highest for a long time.
well, it's been the highest.
Past behavior indicates future success.
And that's exactly why I've been working on this for the last 7 or 8 years. I've spent a disproportionate amount of my time working on free market solutions to health care, not a Western European model like the president is pushing, not a single payer system. Mm-hmm. But I passed Senate Bill 10 in 2009, Senate Bill 7 in 2011, another new Senate Bill 7, which provides incentives for doctors and hospitals to come together and improve outcomes, to follow the best practices, to keep people out of the hospital. And I've been working with both the Texas Medical Association and the Texas Hospital Association to get people to come together, these free market solutions which will improve the health outcomes and save money. At the same time, we've been working since 2007 to get a block grant on our Medicaid funds, because we believe that we can prove that if the federal government will give us a block grant like they are some of the other states, we'll be able, because one size doesn't fit all, we'll be able to meet all of the outcomes that the federal government insists on, the healthcare outcomes. But we'll be able to take care of people, save money, and use a lot of that money to be able to reimburse the care in emergency rooms and get more primary care for people.
Do you think there's a way to shrink the numbers of uninsured in
Yes.
Texas? And why haven't we done it?
Because the federal government has refused to give us a block grant.
That's the only thing blocking us from shrinking that number.
That's one of the ways that we can shrink the number,
Right.
And that's one of the ways that we've been blocked. At the same time, what I just got through describing, probably at too much length, but the free market solutions, Senate Bill 10, 7, and 7, that will reduce the uninsured in Texas.
Okay. Let's go back to the question about the competition. How do you size these guys up? They're all statewide, or two of them are statewide office holders. One of them from your friendly environs in Houston. Who's the threat here? What's this race look like?
To the extent that there's a threat, it's for some reason we don't do what we need to do in my campaign. I'm not running against these fellas. They're going to do what they're going to do. I don't care whether there's 3 or 4 or 1. We're going to run our campaign. And I'm going to run this campaign with my instincts. I think most people that know me think I'm a nice guy. I think most people that know me know I'm a very, very hard worker. I think most people that know me know that I've been leading the Senate just like I've led my company over the years. So I'm going to use leadership. I'm going to outwork people. We're going everywhere, Ross, everywhere. We're down on the Rio Grande 2 days ago. We've been going to small tea party, big tea party, women's groups, men's groups, Republican groups, chambers of commerce, Rotary clubs, et cetera, et cetera. So we're going everywhere.
How big an obstacle is, people have overcome this before, but I'm curious, this is an electorate that just recently chose someone else over you. Do you have to rebuild the relationship here?
I think that a lot of people don't know, and this is a phenomenon with the office of Lieutenant Governor. We saw it with Bullock and we saw it with others. A lot of people don't know who I am. Some do.
Been on a statewide ballot 5 times?
But it's still a fact. When I go out and talk to people, they say, I didn't know that about you. I didn't know that. I didn't know that. And so there's no question, I haven't done as good of a job as I could and should over the years to tell people where I'm coming from and talk about my humble roots. And that's what drives me. And to talk about the things we've done for you all, the people of Texas, whether it's protecting the integrity of elections, whether it's creating more access to health care by passing the medical malpractice tort reform bill in the country, which has created 30,000 more doctors when we're losing 1,000 doctors a year, whether it's fighting for pro-life issues, whether it's keeping Texas one of the 3 most frugal states in the country, in per capita spending, one of the 4 most frugal in per capita state tax. Keeping this state so attractive that we've got a record number of people coming in that are investing in creating jobs. You all have created, because in government, don't let people ever tell you they create jobs, all right? You create jobs.
Everybody in government tells us they create.
I know, but I'm telling you, we don't. I know, as a career business person, I know. What we can do is we either create a very good business climate that attracts people to invest, or we make it a bad climate. Washington's doing the latter, we're doing the former.
So did voters not know this a year ago about you? I mean, you have to gently go back and say, hey guys, you made a mistake.
No, that would be, that's not very smart. You go back.
Maybe you wouldn't phrase it just like that.
You go back, quite frankly.
You're asking people who have voted against you to vote for you.
Well, keep in mind.
So make the sale.
Whoa. With all due respect, most of the Republican primary voters have voted for me a number of times in the past.
Right.
And so all I'm doing is going back and saying, just want to emphasize, we've done this, and this for you. We've protected the integrity of our elections. We are fighting to keep Obamacare out of the state of Texas. We have cut your taxes. Over 50 times we've cut taxes. We've reduced your taxes by almost $16 billion. We've cut your local school property taxes by 1/3. I want to come back in 2015 and cut local school property taxes even again. So we're letting you keep more money into your pocket. At the same time, we're fighting in order to improve our health care, to cover more people. We have made some progress this year in improving our public schools. We put a record amount of new money into our public schools, and we're creating a situation where you and your children have a rosy future. That's important.
The last time the state came in, and I'm not hanging this on you in particular, I'm hanging this on everybody who was there. The last time the state came in and said, we're going to cut your property taxes, they did this tax swap with the franchise tax and some other things. And I think a lot of people came out of that exercise, a lot of property owners came out of that exercise saying, my property taxes didn't go down, but these other taxes went up. And it was true mathematically at the time that that was a big cut in property taxes.
Right.
And it's a legitimate claim. But a lot of people didn't feel it or see it, and the state doesn't have any control over whether those taxes jump right back up. Since you bring this up, how would you cut property taxes and make it stick?
Reform our tax appraisal system. Look at putting some caps on the growth of the appraisals, and cut local school property taxes. Our cutting local school property taxes 6 years ago by a third meant that $7 billion a year of what businesses and individuals are paying, what you're paying, was transferred to the state. I warned everyone, this is going to cause a structural shortfall, and it did. We would have grown out of it in a couple of years, but driving to work one day in the end of 2008, we went into a recession. And so that took us longer to come out. But what made me mad is when the state picked up, again, $7 billion of individual homeowner taxes and business local school property taxes, bang. A lot of the school districts and the appraisal districts were jumping the appraisals. And so people weren't seeing the savings. We still have that obligation.
Were they jumping the appraisals? Were the appraisals accurate? Or are you saying that they were jumping the appraisals to inaccurate numbers to make the shortfall?
No, I'm saying that they were overly aggressive in raising appraisals. That we wanted to save, I won't talk about anyone else, I wanted that 1/3 cut in your local school property taxes, which translates into a 20% cut in all, roughly, approximately, 20% cut in all of your property taxes. I wanted you to be able to see more cash in your pocket. And so that was very frustrating for us.
There were a lot of businesses that went through that exercise and said, you're cutting property taxes for homeowners. Texas is a relatively low tax state, but it's not as low a tax state when it comes to business. They pay half of the sales tax, they pay a chunk of the property taxes, they got this new franchise tax on top of it. If you come back in 2015 and say, okay, we're going to cut property taxes, I'm assuming you're not going to cut spending on education.
We're not going to cut spending. We're going to continue to fund our public education at the level that we think is necessary to sustain it and to hold on to our good teachers.
And where's the money to fund or to pay for the cut in property taxes? What are you going to replace that with?
Again, my model is a growth model. We're growing, this state's growing. I think if you focus on cuts alone, and I'm fine with cuts. I've been involved in cutting spending repeatedly over the last 10 years. I've been involved in the consolidation, the elimination of some 57 different state agencies over the last 10 years. So we've tried to keep government, I'm a small government conservative, and we've tried to keep our state government as small as we can, but doing the essential things that people want it to do. I'll challenge one thing that you said, and that is when you talked about the business taxes. We've tried to keep our business taxes as low as possible. The Sharp Commission argued that with the gross receipts tax that it was almost going to balance out between the cut of $7 billion per year on individuals, on homeowners and businesses, local school property taxes, and what we would get from this franchise tax. I told them at the time, you're wrong on your numbers. I'm a numbers guy. You're wrong on your numbers.
Well,
sure enough,
you and the controller at the time had those numbers right.
Yeah.
Have we grown out of that? Have we grown out of that? Is that structural deficit gone?
Yes. But it's because the growth. But we've gone back and we've still cut. I mean, this year alone, we cut our business taxes by our franchise tax by another 5%. So we're constantly trying to cut taxes on business and individuals so that you have more money, disposable income, and we make the state attractive to do business.
There's a ledger problem. When you walk into that 2015 session and you say, we're going to cut property taxes by this much, and we're going to make it up with this, what's in this hand?
This hand is the growth in our economy. This hand is the growth in our economy and different areas where we may be able to tighten the belt.
How big a cut do you think that could be? How big do you
You're
think?
getting way ahead of me. I want to continue to cut local school property taxes, which means your property taxes. And that's what I will be working with Senator Williams and a number of our senators on.
Is the state going to win these lawsuits on redistricting and voting rights? Or are we going to be, seems to be our habit that we come in with the census, we redraw the maps, and then we go to court for 8 years. We did it in the 90s, we did it in the 2000s. We're on our way. How do you think this goes?
Well, in the 2000s, in the 2003, the state won 5 consecutive lawsuits, federal lawsuits, against the other side on redistricting. I think at the end of the day, there will be some changes to the Texas House and our congressional map, but the court's already signed off on the Senate map as meeting all of the constitutional of the hurdles. But on the on the voter ID bill, this is just one more log on the fire of frustration that I have with this administration and Eric Holder. I was eminently involved in the photo voter ID bill. It took me 4 years to pass it so that finally the House had passed it. It took 4 years. The last session was 26 hours nonstop, and it was slugfest. But we modeled it, as I may have mentioned just a moment ago, after Indiana and Georgia. It is eminently constitutional. And to come in and forum shop, venue shop.
You're talking about suing in Corpus Christi.
That's right. That's right.
Do you think that judge is on their side?
I think there are a number of judges in Corpus Christi that are on their side.
Do you think that judge is on their side?
I don't know, but there are a number of judges that are on their side.
Okay. Do you think the state eventually prevails in this?
Yes.
So Texas has this weird statistic, and I guess this is true in some other states, but generally speaking, give or take, depending on the election, actual mileage may vary, about 70% of Anglos vote Republican. About 65%, sometimes as low as 60% of Hispanics vote Democratic. 90% of blacks tend to vote Democratic. How can you change maps to maximize Republican or Democratic advantage without it becoming a racial argument at this point? I mean, it goes directly to race, doesn't it? Or is there a way, can you say with a straight face, we were maximizing votes for this side or that side, but this wasn't a racial thing? In 2003, you came in and the Republicans knocked out the remaining white Democrats. This time, the Democrats came in to the extent that they could and went after minority Republicans. Is this really about party? Is this about race? Can you see why people conflate them?
Ross, during the entirety of our special committee on redistricting, during the spring and going into late May of 2011, I never sat in on one meeting with Senator Seliger or any of our senators where we talked about race. I believe that the future of the Republican Party depends in large part on our reaching out and bringing everyone who's like-minded into. At the end of the day, estoy seguro que en el futuro nuestros líderes van a estar hispanos. You know, at the end of the day, our future leaders are going to be Hispanics, and we got to reach out. There's more that unites us than divides us.
Let me ask you one more question, and in the meantime, there's a mic over here and a mic over there, and I'll open to audience questions right after this one. You've been Lieutenant Governor some time now. What big things, big chunks do you still want to accomplish? What's still on your to-do list?
Sure. I want to cement a number of the practices which we've been doing in the law,
right,
so that the future legislatures do it. We have voluntarily kept our budget, our spending, at or below inflation and population growth. As a matter of fact, we're some 11% below. And I'm disappointed that I wasn't able to get that passed and into statute. But I want to do that in 2015. I want to continue to improve our schools. We've made progress this year, but we've still got way too many children that are trapped in failing schools. Last year we had 531 schools that were failing. Now that doesn't sound like that many maybe, but if I tell you that there's 315,000 children associated with those 531 schools, wow. I don't want children to have to sit for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 years. It's one of the reasons why we push down the time that parents can come in and turn the school around. But we've got to do a better job with developing our workforce and our children. I happen to be someone that believes that there's a real value in having a little bit of a hammer on our school districts to say, look, we have a program. It may be limited, but school choice. So that if you don't turn this school around, we're not going to let these children stay. So I want to push for something not dissimilar to what Florida has been able to do. I want to see more transparency in government. And again, our future depends on our continuing to be able to grow. And so I want to put a lot of emphasis because it's not just one element. There's not one lever. It's a combination of you've got to keep your road systems good, and you've got to be able to keep your neighborhood safe, and you've got to have a well-trained workforce, and you've got to be able to make this state more attractive than the other states. But that's how you grow.
But you've argued, so you've argued that you've done those things.
No, I've done a lot of those, but we've got to continue. We've got to do even more.
So I guess a voter would be, you know, and I guess I've heard this from some of your opponents. Why haven't you done that yet? I mean, there's
I've already done that.
Right.
We've done that. But my whole point, and I guess I'm not explaining it very well, because if we stop right now, because the dogs caught the car, because people have woken up. They're coming to Texas for opportunity. They're not coming to Texas to turn Texas blue. They don't want to change things. They're coming here so they can buy in to our Texas miracle, to our dream. So they're coming here, and if we don't continue growing, we're going to get behind the 8 ball, and we're going to start to slide.
Great. I want to thank you very much for coming
I want to thank you.
Let's take some questions
Sure.
from these guys.